In this video, we're going to cover Minority Report. This is a parliamentary term that saw a surge in popular awareness thanks to the 2002 motion picture Minority Report, starring Tom Cruise, which was directed by Steven Spielberg and is an adaptation of a novella by legendary science fiction author Philip K. Dick. In the movie, the talents of three extraordinary psychics are employed to predict the future, specifically to predict every major crime before it actually happens, thereby allowing the police to arrest criminals before they even commit their crimes. Operating under the assumption that these extraordinary psychics are good at their jobs, one naturally expects that they will always agree on the future. However, the movie revolves around one particular case where these three didn't agree. Two saw the future one way, while the third saw something different, thereby dubbed the Minority Report, and becoming the focus of the movie. So, do minority reports actually exist in parliamentary law? Yes, they do, and here's how they work. One of the primary functions of a committee is to present a report to its parent assembly. Before the report can be presented to the assembly, it must be drafted and adopted by the committee, and the members of the committee must agree on the content of the report. A majority vote is required inside the committee to make the report the official report of the committee. This means that even if some members of the committee do not support the report and vote against the report, it's still possible and proper for it to be adopted by the committee as the official report of the committee. And then that report will be presented to the parent assembly, often containing recommendations. So, what about those committee members who disagreed with the report? Do they have any options? Yes, they do. That's where the minority report comes in. They can draft a separate report detailing their views and, if applicable, their recommendations. So when there's a minority report representing the views of the minority, does that mean there's a majority report representing the views of the majority? No, it does not. The report adopted by the committee should not be referred to as the majority report. Instead, it should be referred to as the committee report, since it was adopted by the committee. Robert's Rules of Order advises that, regardless of whether a minority report is submitted, however, the report adopted by the vote of a majority in the committee should always be referred to as the committee report, never the majority report. So how does this work in the assembly where the report will actually be presented? Well, in the parent assembly, after being recognized by the chair, the reporting member of the committee, usually the committee's chairman, presents the committee report, ordinarily by reading it. The reporting member might begin by saying, "The Architectural Restoration Committee reports the following." He would then read the entire report. That report is then placed on file to become a part of the permanent records of the organization. Now, when there is a minority report, the reporting member would inform the assembly of this fact, for example, by saying, "The minority wishes to submit its views in a separate report." The chair then calls for the minority report, and the appropriate member of the committee presents it, usually by reading it. And a minority report might begin as follows. The undersigned, a minority of the Architectural Restoration Committee, not agreeing with the majority, wish to express their views as follows. And he continues reading the entire report, which will also be placed on file as a part of the permanent records of the association. Now let's look back to the presentation of the committee report, and let's say it contains a recommendation to adopt a motion. Then at the conclusion of the report, the reporting member would say, for example, "On behalf of the committee, I move the adoption of the following motion, that Napoleon Restoration shall be contracted to restore the water wheel on the Old Country Store." The presiding officer then places the motion before the assembly by saying, "It is moved that Napoleon Restoration shall be contracted to restore the water wheel on the Old Country Store." In cases where there is a minority report to be presented, the presiding officer then calls for the minority report. In such a case, the minority report may contain a recommendation related to the motion. For instance, the minority report might include the following. The minority recommends that the motion be amended by striking out Napoleon Restoration and inserting Duke of Wellington Carpentry. This, of course, is only a recommendation, and it is up to the assembly to decide whether or not to amend the motion and whether or not to adopt the motion. I do want to be clear, though, that minority reports are not common. They're not even close to common. That doesn't mean that committees are always unanimously in agreement. It's just that when there are dissenting members, they're generally not want to create their own report. Instead, those opposed to the committee recommendations brought before the assembly simply speak in opposition during debate, just the same as any other member of the Assembly might. Robert's Rules of Order has this to say on the subject. But in debate on any written or oral report in the Assembly, any member of the reporting committee who does not concur has the same right as any other member of the Assembly to speak individually in opposition. Robert's Rules of Order goes on to say, whether the views of the minority are formally presented or not, however, any member can move that resolutions proposed by the committee be amended, or that they be postponed indefinitely, or that some other appropriate action be taken. It should also be noted that the presentation of a minority report is not automatic. Just because one has been drafted doesn't mean the minority has the right to present it. If any member objects to its presentation, a majority vote is required to allow it to be presented. Robert's Rules of Order states, as indicated above, the formal presentation of a minority report is a privilege that the Assembly may accord, not a matter of right, since the appointment of the committee implies that the Assembly is primarily interested in the findings of the majority of the committee's members. When the minority of a committee wishes to make a formal presentation of its views, it is customary, unless the Assembly refuses permission, to receive its report immediately after the report of the committee. A majority vote is required to receive a minority report. The question is undebatable. Robert's Rules of Order provides one more interesting detail. If the committee members in the minority do not agree, the Assembly can allow more than one minority report to be submitted. While a minority report from an average committee is extremely rare, more than one minority report from a committee is bordering on absurd. But it's not against the rules. So another question arises. Can a single member of a committee create and submit a minority report? The answer is no. Robert's Rules of Order provides that the formal presentation of a so-called minority report, that is, the presentation of an expression of views in the name of a group of committee members not concurring with a committee report, is usually allowed by the Assembly when such permission is requested. We see here that a minority report is intended to come from a group of committee members, not a single committee member. However, the presentation of a minority report is a request that requires the permission of the Assembly. So, in that regard, any Assembly member, even a dissenting member of a committee, could request to make a report, and the Assembly would then either grant this very unusual request or deny it. So, it would be highly unusual, but the Assembly could allow each dissenting member of the committee to present his own report. But a report by a single member of a committee is not, by definition, a minority report. There is one final wrinkle to all of this. Committee members who feel pretty good about most of the committee report, but do not agree to all of it, have another option. Such a member can express agreement, but indicate an exception. For example, let's say a report contains several particulars, as the entries A through F shown here. And let's say a member concurs with all of the points except one. After those committee members who concur with the report have signed it, the committee member who is in agreement with the report, except in that one particular, can add a statement of that fact and then sign the report. Robert's Rules of Order provides that if a written committee report is of considerable importance, it should be signed by all the members concurring. Robert's Rules of Order goes on to provide, if a written report of a committee is signed by all who concur and a committee member is in agreement with the report except in one particular, he can, after all who agree to the report have signed, add a statement that he concurs with the report except the part that he specifies, and then sign the statement, regardless of whether a minority report is to be submitted. It is my sincerest hope that this video provides you with a better understanding of the minority report and the rules that surround it, but also that this video does not in any way encourage you to create a minority report unnecessarily. Because remember that the Assembly is mostly concerned with the view expressed by the majority of the committee. There is plenty of room for additional concerns to be raised and for dissenting views to be expressed in debate inside the Assembly after the committee report is received. That covers minority report. Action! No, act better!